The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome to the SpotTrack.com podcast. Kevin Sylvester along with Paul Peck and the founder of SpotTrack.com, Mike Giannetti, here on a Tuesday in May, and it's NBA time because we're going to talk about 5 free agents to be and the gazillions of dollars that they are going to rake in. And one of them...
You may be underestimating with gazillions.
Well, I mean...
Is there a word bigger than gazillions, gabillions?
We are on the heels of LeBron James and those 4 other guys who play with him on the Cavaliers sweeping the Toronto Raptors. I mean, it was... dare I say this is his best postseason,
better than ever.
Mike?
Better than ever. I mean, it's unbelievable. The age, the wear and tear. Nothing's. This is Tom Brady, but in a violent sport, right?
Yes.
I mean, in a sport where he should be breaking down and everything should be declining a little bit, and the numbers are. It's almost like a U. They talked about it last night. If you watched the game, he started off with huge numbers in the postseason, then he sort of dipped in the middle of his career, and now he's way back up. He's higher than ever in terms of production in the postseason. So. He's putting this thing on his shoulders, and it's a contract year, and that always helps an athlete.
Well, he's like to use Kenny Rogers' line in the Gambler. He knows when to hold them.
That's right.
He knows when to fold them.
Yeah, the clutch baskets have been amazing. From
2
him.
buzzer beaters. Yeah, yes,
ridiculous.
And you go back to round 1 where Indiana they were tough, and it was a tough matchup for him. Games 5 and 7, he literally told his team, just get in the backpack here. I'm going to carry you.
Yeah, and I think all of us, because we had the chance to see Michael Jordan play. I think we all we're a little older, have a kind of lean towards Michael Jordan as the greatest. But when LeBron does what he does, particularly with the buzzer beaters, that's what made Jordan what he is. When LeBron is doing it, your grounds for the argument about whether Jordan's better or not are a little bit weaker.
I'll still take Jordan 1. I'll take LeBron 1A. Yes,
cop out.
All right, fine. LeBron's 2. If I were picking right now, all time, I would take Michael Jordan 1.
It's a harder argument now, Mike, isn't it?
It's an impossible argument. The only decision I make to factor in is Jordan's defense. To me, that's the only difference right now.
Yes.
Jordan was a tenacious defensive player in the backcourt, which LeBron really can never do. He just can't do because of his size and his lack of agility to be able to stop guards like that. But I mean, he's just as deadly on the boards with rebounds, with blocks. I mean, he's got his element, but to me, Jordan separates himself with that regard.
Yeah, Jordan to me is the greatest ever, and then it's LeBron, and I'll say Larry Bird 3rd, and then we'll let the arguments ensue. But speaking of Bird. When it comes to the NBA here, part of the reason why these players are eligible to become free agents are bird rights, right? The Larry Bird exceptions and rules. So you can explain what that is.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the one area where LeBron James will be separating himself from Michael Jordan is with the contract, because Jordan only made $93 million in his 16 seasons, and LeBron's pretty much going to do that in 3 years. So, the discussion going forward here with contracts is interesting because there's so many major players involved, and who knows if they're going to group up and link up and pull another Miami stunt. Who knows sort of who's staying, who's going. That discussion seems to be sort of
muted,
an open discussion right now, and I think we'll talk about it in a few minutes here. I think it's sort of evolving in front of our eyes as we get towards the off season here. But yeah, the situation with bird rights is extremely complicated, and it's something we've written about a bunch on Spot Track, and we'll be tweeting that stuff out this week to sort of go along with this discussion. But basically, it's sort of a situation where you can't move players around the league, team by team, and sort of have them max out at max dollar for 1 year and then move again. Basically, what was happening is, as free agency started to really take off, people were taking advantage of it and sort of getting maximum dollars without keeping teams intact, and it was bad for the game. It was a really bad situation for basketball. And really, the goal is to keep players intact as much as possible. As much as our discussion forthcoming is going to negate that, but. The deal with bird rights is to sort of minimize the amount of money a player can make in 1 year versus 2 years versus 4 years versus 5 years. And we sort of laid that out in this piece we've published at SpotTrack.com this week. We've highlighted 5 players you all know, starting with LeBron, right down to Durant, Chris Paul, DeMarcus Cousins, and Paul George. They're pretty much the 5 elite players that will hit the market this offseason. And we've given pretty much every single scenario in terms of the rights. whether they deal with bird rights, early bird rights, non-bird rights. These are all the buzzwords that go with these contracts. They've all got stipulations, but really, rather than define them specifically, it's easier just to show monetarily what each means, and we've done that in bulleted lists here for each player. So we can kind of go through and discuss some of the bullet points in terms of each player and what their decisions might be. But really what I've done in terms of kind of putting this piece together is come to a logical assumption, which is impossible. It's sort of like mocking up a draft.
Right, that's right, yeah.
But we've kind of come to where the money fits versus where they fit on a roster, whether it's their current or a new one. And we've sort of laid out what we think may happen in terms of this offseason and going into the next year.
So start with LeBron, and do those numbers and does figuring all the bird right stuff point you in a direction one way or the other about whether he'll stay in Cleveland or where he could go if he doesn't stay?
So we've had, 3-4 discussions on this podcast about LeBron and all the different places we think he's going to go. And doing this article and watching this postseason has me completely backwards now. It has me thinking there's no way he's leaving. There's no way. Because leaving financially might be a little bit better in the long term, right? It may be. It may be. It isn't in terms of his rights. Cleveland will always be able to give him the extra year, will always be able to give him a little bit more money because they own his current bird rights. So if he does opt out and leave, that will reset. So he'll have to start over with a new team and go from there. And he's 33 going on 34, and all that stuff sort of comes into play. But here's the deal. And here's something that just off the bat, which sounds silly because it's such a little amount of money, but here's the deal. We'll know what LeBron James is going to do based on this player option. The player option that he has on his current deal is $35.6 million, which is more than his maximum salary on a new contract next year will be. It's more. Mm-hmm. So he has no reason to opt out if he's staying with Cleveland. He's going to stay.
So financially, it makes more sense for him to take the option and stay.
He will opt in and stay with Cleveland and make $300,000 more than he could have made elsewhere, which is peanuts. It's nothing.
Okay.
It's peanuts.
I was going to say,
but
spends it at the mall.
But in terms of the decision, what I'm saying is we're going to know what he's going to do based on this option. So if he opts out, there's a pretty good chance he's leaving right off the bat.
So the indication to you is, even though it's not definitive, if he opts out to you, that says he's going. He's gone.
He's gone.
Because he could opt out and stay with a new contract. But why would you do that when you already have the parameters in place to get the same money and a little more?
Here's my thinking. There's sort of like a long-term effect with this. He's got the player option for a little bit more for next year. If he opts out, none of us think he's going to take a 5-year deal or a 4-year deal, right? None of us think so. I think that might come next offseason. Right, so the way this is working is there's projected to be a little bit of a bump in the salary cap this coming year, up to about 101 where we have it projected. But then the 2019-20 season, people are saying 108 to 109 million. So just like in football, the greater the bump in the league cap, the greater the maximum contracts can go. Right, the greater that minimum first salary goes. So for LeBron, and I'm going to say the same thing for Kevin Durant here in a bit. I think we're looking at another 1-year deal, maybe with a player option for 2019, another opt-out, and then maybe in each case, they both cash in on a maximum deal, on a 5-year maximum contract to stay right where they are. I'm going to project that both I think LeBron does an opt-in, then cashes in with a 5-year deal to finish his career in Cleveland. That's what I think financially makes the most sense.
I hope that happens.
I think a lot of people do.
Right? Yeah, sure.
Don't you think he does too?
I would think so.
Why would a guy at age 34 want to go and uproot and have to start over and kind of put this thing together? And it seems
the only argument to that is
because it took Miami a year and a half to make it work.
Right. The only argument to that is sometimes these guys get impatient or they want another challenge. And that's what I wonder with a lot of these guys.
But winning in Cleveland is not a challenge.
What's a greater challenge than taking a team on your shoulders?
But he's been there, done that. He's been there, done that. That's when I say another challenge. It's like, all right, I want to go. Do I prove to everybody that I can do it with another team? Or I'm bored here. I want to go somewhere else. I mean, there's a lot of emotional reasons why LeBron would stay where he is in Cleveland, and let's hope that he gives those consideration. But I don't know that I'm sold that that's going to be what's going to make his decision.
What's better for basketball?
You could argue that him going to another market is better for basketball. Him going to the Lakers, to resuscitate that team could be better.
Well, I think there'll be enough interest for guys like Paul George to go to the Lakers.
Yes.
Chris Paul maybe going back to L.A. instead of playing second fiddle to James Harden in Houston, even though it's working out this year. I could see that happening. I think what's better for basketball is to have LeBron James in Cleveland.
In the East.
And in the Eastern Conference. That is also correct. You've got Giannis in Milwaukee. If you can keep stars in these smaller markets to keep the focus on those smaller markets. I mean, there are teams in other markets that are just like, did you watch Utah at all this year? Now, Utah is a good team. They made the second round of the playoffs, but after Gordon Hayward left, it was like, boy, nobody wants to play. Utah's no good. Wait a second. Ricky Rubio's a star in Utah. They've got good players there. You look at a team like Minnesota. They've been down in the dumps forever. They made the playoffs this year. Memphis, right? Playoff team 2 years ago. I think last year too. But terrible team this year. I think if I'm the NBA, I want the stars to stay with their team. That's how we grew up. The stars were, for the most part, always
but it's not
with
really
their team.
Sports anymore. I know what you're saying,
well,
Kevin.
but
I
here's
long
a chance
for that too.
Here's a chance for one of the greatest athletes of all time to make it that way.
I just don't know that the guys think that way. I would hope that they would. I would love that they would.
He went back.
Right.
He went back, which was remarkable, right? Wasn't that? I mean, that was a huge surprise that he went back.
I think the only discussion, and we just talked about it, the Jordan comparison, and whether he thinks about that or not is irrelevant because it's going to be in his face every minute for the next 10 years, whether he wants it or not. The only real argument people make is the 6 championships, right? So the only discussion LeBron should be having right now is how do I win more championships?
He goes every year.
There's no easier path right now than being in the East.
Right.
There's no easier path. If you go to the Lakers, you are starting from scratch and you are 10th in that conference right now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, there's no easier way to get to the Eastern Conference Finals or to the Conference Finals than right now where he is and just improve upon what you have.
The other part of it too is, he's already a marketing. Everybody wants him.
So it doesn't matter where he is.
So it doesn't matter if he's in New York or L.A., right? I mean, because you think if you want to stay in the East, the Knicks would be like a great pull to have LeBron James be a New York Knick, but LeBron doesn't need that. He's in Cleveland.
He also
right?
probably knows how poorly run they are. And
right.
He's smart enough to not
They
want to.
They did just hire his favorite coach, though. They did just hire his favorite coach in David Fizdale. So there's probably some draw, but the team's just so bad. No Porzingis next year. To me, that's a no-brainer. No.
Right.
But
Philly's going to be a team to deal with.
Philly's intriguing. Really intriguing, in my opinion, especially with Ben Simmons laying an egg in this postseason right now. I mean, if they had a piece like LeBron to at least be a role player on that team, it would be unbelievable. And to me, the only other option, and I've heard it a lot, and I wrote about it in my piece, and it's in the West. To me, this is the only team in the West where this could come into play, and it's Houston. If Houston can make it work, and you've got a situation where LeBron and James Harden, maybe Paul, I think Paul might walk. I agree with you. I think Paul walks. But if you're putting Harden and LeBron and Clint Capella together on a team that's already primed to win, defensively is already great, and we'll see how they do here up against Golden State in a few weeks. But to me, that's the only draw that makes sense for him in the West.
See, I differ. I'll give you another team that might make sense, only because the owner will want to go after guys, and that's the Dallas Mavericks.
I know, but they're just as bad as the Knicks right now.
I know they are, but if they get LeBron and Paul George, or if they can get Durant to come, Durant probably figured out. I looked at his paycheck. Man, look at how much money I'm paying in taxes here in California.
Yeah. Let's talk about Durant's paycheck because this is actually a really interesting. I don't think enough people talked about what Durant did this year. So I broke it down in a quick paragraph here, but it's worth discussing. He was in a situation where LeBron's about to be in, where basically last year he had a chance to max out. He didn't. He had a chance to maintain some rights, his bird rights that we talked about, and take about $32 million. He didn't. Instead, he took $25 million. He took $6 million less than his minimum threshold sort of came in. And the reason he did that is the Warriors were able to sign back Sean Livingston and Andre Iguodala late because he made this move. It was a complete team move. It was a huge cut for him in terms of what he should have taken. And let me tell you why it's important. Because this year's salary, his player option, is a percentage of last year's salary. So the lower he went last year, it affected his ability to make money this year. So his maximum threshold this year is only $30 million, right? If he stays and does a 1-year player option deal with Golden State again, which I do think he'll do. So he's $5 million less than where LeBron and Chris Paul and those guys can make because of how much less he took last year. So it was a classy move. It was arguably a dumb move for a player of his caliber, but man, He did it to keep that camp together, and they're the favorites to win again. Yeah.
Do you think there's a point in Kevin Durant's career where he wants to be the man? Because he's never been necessarily the man on the team that he's been. We could argue the Harden and things like that, or Westbrook. Do you think that he says, I want to be the guy on my team?
Maybe, but I think the Carmelo Anthonys of the world should have squashed that by now, because I think that was his philosophy right straight through. I mean, from college straight through. That was the deal. I'm going to be the guy and feed me the ball, and we're going to win. They didn't win. So to me, Durant is the man in Golden State. I mean, Steph Curry's limited with injuries. He's playing just fine. He's the type of player that we all expect him to be. But I think Durant has garnered enough attention this year as a two-way player. I mean, he's defensively become unbelievable out there. So I think just 2-3 more years in that uniform with the wins, putting up the numbers that he's putting up, he's going to get enough recognition to stand himself out with the league. And I'm, like I said, similar situation with LeBron. I think he's going to take a 1-year deal to stay. He'll have a player option for 2019. He'll opt out, and then I think he's going to cash in. Klay Thompson falls off that roster in 2019. They're going to lose a couple other small pieces, so there's going to be some cap room. They're going to need to fill a piece. I think they're going to look at Durant at that point and say, you're our guy. You're our centerpiece for the rest of this run, and they're going to
new arena coming for them, too, in San Francisco, which sort of raises
everybody's getting out of Oakland.
Raises the bar of what's going on.
Hey, right? You've been there, right?
I have.
Okay. Fine people, just older city. That's coming from people based in Buffalo. Okay.
I'm calling Marshawn Lynch and telling him you said that.
Hey, you know what? Marshawn Lynch, give that guy credit. He's invested back into his city of Oakland. So, shame on me. If I had Marshawn's money, I would invest back in Buffalo, Paul, but I don't. DeMarcus Cousins is going to make some money, too. Here's a guy who blew out his Achilles with the Pelicans, although they were a different team without him, faster team.
Boy, what a story this is, because, he has lost some leverage here. He was playing great, playing the best ball of his career. On a fresh team here, kind of got a fresh start, put him with Anthony Davis.
Durant had more technicals than he did.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. Cousins, he was really playing the role. He was really doing a nice job. And in a contract year that, set to sort of max out here and go forward. But, this team looks good right now. They look younger and faster and sort of the new wave of NBA that has been, right? I mean, the center position is just a dying art. It just is. I mean, you're seeing centers out in the three-point line right now. So I don't think a max contract is in his future anymore. I don't. But I do think both sides would make sense to come together, though, with some sort of nice deal, $20-25 million a year, for a few years, and sort of keep him in the fold as whatever player they need him to be. Anthony Davis isn't going to stay healthy. Rajon Rondo's, a free agent who's coming back probably, but he's 35 years old. So, they're going to need players. They're going to need – it's a long season. So, they're going to need, to sort of flex their situation similar to what they did this year. I think having a big man like that sort of lets you handle the long season and get you ready for a postseason like this. That's sort of what LeBron does, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, LeBron sort of coasts a little bit. He sort of uses his role players a little more during the year, which is why they sort of went into the tank for a month and a half. But, he was saving himself for this ridiculous playoff run as well. So to me, that's the new NBA. That's the way to go. I don't see $35 million a year for Cousins, something he could garner. I think it's going to be more in the $20-25 million range, but I think all signs point to him staying right there.
It's incredible amounts of money.
Let's talk about this, because let's say these 5 guys do get, let's just say 30. Let's say these guys get at least 30 a year eventually, right? We're talking about a situation where there are right now 7 players. Let me look at next year, actually. I want to see where this is going, because these extensions have been flying in. We have right now 9 players who are making at least $30 million a year. We have 24 players making at least $25 million a year, and that's without this fresh free agent season coming up. So, and the names are ridiculous. I mean, some of these names, Otto Porter Jr., $26 million a year. Just unbelievable. It's that some of these guys are getting where they're getting. When you get down to the $15 million, mark, which is unbelievable money, you're talking about names you've probably never heard before. Honestly, never heard before. So it's an unbelievable situation that the NBA's put themselves in with this global money and the TV dollars and things like that. The players, the representatives have done a great job with these CBAs in terms of keeping everybody paid. we're going to talk about this a little in baseball next because the gap in baseball is just ridiculous. It's getting worse. And the game is changing to a point where that's going to get worse. But basketball has done a really nice job of taking care of their middle class. They really have.
I have a project for you in the future, and I
don't like homework.
No, I'll hint at it here, so you have to do it. Okay. But it's only based upon a guard you had there that was in the $15 million range, and that's Reggie Jackson.
Yeah.
So I want you to find out what's the top grossing name in professional sports history.
Yeah. How many years did it take point guard Reggie Jackson to make Reggie Jackson baseball players money?
Probably
right?
one. Probably one, yeah. But I'm just, but maybe Ken Griffey's the most grossing name because of senior and junior. Sure. But anyhow, that's a homework assignment
I
for
hope
you.
it's not like John Smith or something.
Yeah, it might be.
Frankly, it could just be
Jones or Smith or
it could be Giancarlo Stanton.
I was going to say,
right?
isn't it just LeBron James? End of conversation.
Yeah, it very well could be.
Or it's like the great the trivia like Giancarlo's long lost brother who had one at bat. Yeah. He and Giancarlo are the highest paid.
We know it's not Giancarlo.
Right? Like the DiMaggios.
We know it's not Giancarlo because he was Mike for half of this. So he changed his name. So he's out of the equation.
That's right.
Let me throw you number 8 real quick. One last number to kind of parting shot with this NBA conversation. Let's say LeBron James does what I'm projecting here, which is take his $35 million next year as a 1-year deal. Then he takes a 5-year, $220 million max extension to finish it off, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about a player who will have $490 million in career earnings on the court.
I was just going to say, is he approaching $500 million?
Yep, $490.
But what has he done with it all?
Yeah, right? He made $36 million on a pizza company.
Right.
Come on.
Well, we may see him try to become an owner someday, Maybe that will be his next contract.
He's part owner for the Liverpool football club?
Did not know that.
I didn't know that
And he
either.
made $30 million in that investment already.
Wow. Smart. You know what? Smart with his money. Good for him.
Right.
Good for him. He's earned every penny. So has Max Scherzer as we slide into baseball here. I didn't say that right. Max Scherzer. Yes.
Yeah, say what you will about him. The reason we bring up Max Scherzer is he had another 15 strikeout game this weekend, and it sort of piqued my interest in terms of just where he sort of lays in the threshold of baseball right now because, look, it's a different game. It's quickly and feverishly becoming a very different game. Give or take, whether it's better to watch, whether it's more fun to be at, whether it's more fun to play, I don't know. But we'll sort of talk about the landscape of the change in a little bit here. But let's just break down Scherzer real quickly because it's been sort of underrated in terms of what he's done and what Detroit gave up. So he gets a Cy Young with Detroit, right? On his arbitration salaries, he was making $10-12 million a year, doing well, living within the Detroit means in terms of the finances, right?
You can live well in Detroit on $100,000.
That's right.
$10 million.
So he was already an elite pitcher leaving Detroit, right? And they let him walk, and they sent him to Washington where, he's cashed in. He's making $30 million a year, which sounded ridiculous when he did it because he was 30 years old, which seems silly for a starting pitcher. Except it is now a strikeout league, and that's sort of where we're going to here.
Mm-hmm.
So his 15 strikeouts a game, or say his 10 to 12 strikeouts a game back in Detroit are now 14 and 15, and it's regular. It's happening all the time. He led the league in strikeouts 2 years in a row. He's leading right now. He's combining that with low ERAs and low whips and all the things you want to see that give you back-to-back Cy Youngs.
But he's also in the National League where he's pitching to pitchers who aren't as good of hitters. That's got to be part of it.
He did win a Cy Young in Detroit.
I know, I'm just saying, but the numbers have gone up.
So he's shown he can do it everywhere is what I'm saying. So we take all this into effect when we're doing our value stats, and we do this every single day. We import stats, and our value numbers sort of just kind of update accordingly, right, based on our formulas. Max Scherzer's a 75 value rating right now out of 100, which sounds nice and average. Except with a $30 million salary, we include salary with stats. That's how we get our value. So to have $30 million salary, it's almost impossible to be any sort of value. He's a 75% value right now.
You have to win every game and strike out 15 players every game to approach your pay,
right.
And he is.
Right. His production is off the charts. It's ridiculous. And really the conversation isn't so much how great he is, but it's how the game has evolved to sort of mold his production, right? I mean, that's where we're going
back
here.
around to him. And I find this very interesting, and this is a big topic. There's been a lot of discussion, and a lot of it came because for the first time ever, there were more strikeouts than hits in the month of April, which is amazing because for a good part of our lives, strikeouts were a negative. Guys who struck out a lot were a scarlet letter. They, go back to the minors, figure out how to make contact. 2 outs, choke up on the bat, hit the opposite way.
Yeah.
I mean, these are baseball idioms that have gone back 100 years, but now they're irrelevant.
They don't even teach kids how to bunt anymore. They don't, which is a crime.
They don't even teach you how to make contact anymore, which is crazy. And this goes into the launch angle thing, and this is all driven by the analytics, who said you're better off hitting a home run than 3 hits and a sac fly. And it's an amazing change in a sport that you wouldn't think after all these years would have been there for a dramatic change.
So you're saying nerds have ruined it with the analytics?
I'm saying they're part of it.
It's sort of twofold, right? Because yes, analytics have driven this, but also, I mean, marketing drove this. Marketing has to. Everybody knows that '98 season where
Chicks
Sosa,
love the
McGuire
long
were.
ball,
Yes,
right?
I mean, look at that's all reality. I mean, stadiums need seats and butts and seats and
But that was 18. That was 20 years ago.
It was.
So what has happened in the last 2 years to change this?
Well, they figured out how to hit home runs without taking steroids.
That's part of it.
That is exactly right.
Part of it.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
That's exactly right. And
I think power pitching, which sometimes leads to more home runs when you can make contact. It's they don't even scout you if you don't throw 94. These days. So is that part of it too?
It's all a part of it, and it's sort of coming full circle in front of our eyes here. And really, rather than sort of break down the stat part of it, which a lot of people have done, and it's sort of becoming the discussion with even while you're watching a game live now. I mean, you're hearing about this stuff. Where I want to take this is what's going to happen with the money because of these changes, because these are significant changes to the game and to the players in the game. And really, what I've sort of ascertained here is that the Giancarlo Stantons and the players, the Aaron Judges, who not yet hasn't cashed in yet, but those players, while maybe they're worth 50 home runs, aren't there going to be 15 players who hit 40 this year? Right? Aren't there going to be 25 to 30 players who hit 30?
30, right?
Yeah.
Right? So I mean,
diminishing the value of it a little bit.
Of course.
Which,
how can
mentioning Reggie Jackson, that used to be a high number.
40, right? He was
God,
in the
no.
40.
He led the league with 30 one year.
Yeah,
I remember
true.
20 home runs led the league once.
Yeah, it took the Griffeys and those players to get to 40 and make 40 a real thing. But But yeah, I mean, it's any business, right? It's any business model with supply and demand. If there's a saturation of players who can hit 30, then why would you pay for 40? If 40 is going to cost you $25 million a year,
I'd rather get 3 guys.
pay
at
2
30,
guys who
right?
can hit 30. Yeah. So I see that coming. I think we already saw it. I think we already saw it this past offseason. I think that's a big factor of why a guy like JD Martinez took forever to sign. And I think it's very interesting that he signed where he signed after having done some research here, because I did some work on team home runs and team strikeouts and things like that to sort of prepare myself here. And Boston's just not buying into this. They're not buying into this. They are a city. They're a stubborn city. We know this. Yeah. Just across the board. But you won't hear them talking launch angle in Boston. It's just not a thing. So for them to bring in JD Martinez, they're bringing him in because he hit 310 last year. They're bringing him in because he hit 45 doubles. They're bringing him in because he was a power need in a system that is built for doubles and strikeouts or minimal strikeouts and steals and things like that. He was just a need based on the current roster. But that's a city right now that is not buying into the launch angle, and there are a few. And let me tell you something. There are 5 teams at the bottom of the list in terms of team strikeouts to go along with the conversation we just had about how there's been a ton of strikeouts. The 5 lowest team strikeouts, 4 of them are in first place right now.
Doesn't shock me.
And I'm that to me, that's the one thing for me to watch going for the next 3 months here is does that remain? Does hitting home runs and striking out just as much actually translate into long-term wins? Because as of right now, it's not.
Well, the other thing that I'm thinking of as you say this, if it goes that way, all right, we want to get a roster full of guys who can hit at least 20 home runs.
Right.
That to me is going to traditionally the guys who hit home runs are not the best fielders, just traditionally, right? And if teams are going to try to hit home runs anyways, you're not going to need great fielders out there. right? You're gonna
nobody's hitting the ball on the
right.
ground anymore, right? I mean, that is a negative.
You
right
don't
now.
need Steve Sachs and Omar Vizquel up the middle. You're gonna have Bobby Grich and Cal Ripken up the middle. I'm saying, like, you just want guys who are going to swing for the fences,
Right.
even playing the most important positions.
If the goal is to hit the ball in the air every time, again, what's the benefit of having a great rangy shortstop?
So this is it's a great point. It's something I brought up here as one of my notes as well, in terms of if this is all that the majority of hitters are going to be doing, getting up there, angling 20 degrees at every swing and lifting this ball, how do you value these guys? If the ball doesn't go out, right, or if they're striking out 200 times and nobody cares, if they're hitting 40 home runs and nobody cares, and there's no other stats in between, how do you value these guys, right?
That's a great question.
So, to me, the defensive side of the ball is going to have to come into play. Some of these guys have to play defense, right? I mean, it's going to be important in terms of, especially in the postseason when, actual baseball sort of comes together a little bit, but to me, it's going to be very interesting to see if this becomes a robotic situation where everybody's really doing this, or if it sort of fizzles out, if it really doesn't work. Because like I said, if it doesn't translate to wins, this is going to go out the door as quickly as it came in.
Is there the potential that we've seen in other sports where certain positions fill up the bulk of the money? So your power hitters, your starting pitchers, and frankly, your bullpen guys, and then nobody else gets paid.
All right,
is that where we're headed?
Yes.
Why would you pay a shortstop and a second baseman if they can only hit 15 home runs a year? What's the point?
Yeah, you're going to be signing shortstops that can hit bombs. I mean, guys like Didi Gregorius.
Unless there's 20 of them, that's unusual.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how far that goes, because positionally, I mean, I've even stopped it when I evaluate baseball players in terms of next contract. I don't even use positions anymore. I just use batters or batters.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a second baseman or a third baseman or an outfielder. A batter is a batter, because the stats are so uniform now.
Paul, it's going to be at some point the shortstop's going to be like, it's a single. I'm not even diving for that. It could hurt my elbow
The
for a home run
shortstop's going
swing.
to play like a softball short center fielder.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, we've already got guys playing positions that never existed before, with shifts and things like that.
All right.
It's amazing.
I'm going on a tangent here because of this point, by the way. They're shifting, and you hit a ball to second base, but the shortstop makes the play, and he throws you out at first. They're still calling that a ground out to the shortstop. I hate that.
Oh, I hate that too.
I hate that.
Because of the
It's got to
position,
change. You hit it to second base.
It should be where the ball is
it's
hit,
an
not
E4.
who fields
it's
it.
a G4. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've got to change that. It's a huge gripe with me.
Well, but it's who made the assist on the
I don't
out.
like it. I don't like it.
Okay, well, I think it's okay. All right, let's move on. There's so much good news here.
Contract of the week time.
Yes, contract of the week.
Time now for the contract of the week.
All right, contract of the week is Matty Ice, Matt Ryan, which, by the way, they name it after a beer, Natty Ice, Matty Ice down there in the South. And
I don't think that's how he got the nickname, though.
no.
It's possible.
I think it's
High
possible.
school, he was.
No, I'm not saying that's because he drank a lot of
No,
it. No,
well-
clearly he does not if you look at him.
Ice water in his veins.
Okay. Well, anyways, I forgive me for taking it down to a lower level, Paul. With that, all right, let's.
And I think Natty Ice is about as low a level as you can get to.
You said it, not me. But in a pinch, it'll do. All right, $100 million guaranteed.
First, $80 million guaranteed player in football history, right?
Yeah, this is the first. This is the first $100 million. This is exactly where it should be, by the way. There's no surprise on our end. This is what we've been saying all along here. It was just really a race of it wasn't going to be Matt Ryan or Aaron Rodgers first in terms of how this was going to break down this offseason. It's a great deal. I have absolutely no gripes with this deal from Atlanta's standpoint, from Matt Ryan's standpoint. The numbers are all where they should be. He's first in everything. I mean, in terms of he's first in everything except for signing bonus, and really he did just fine there. He made $46.5 million in terms of his bonus. So everything else is right down the middle. $52.5 in 2018, $74 million through 2 years, and $94.5 million through 3 years. So pretty good money to throw a football around a couple times a day.
What's it mean for Aaron Rodgers?
It means a lot. I've done some work here in the past few days, sort of analyzing those two specifically together. And Rodgers is about 5% better in terms of production. But he's 2 years older. He's coming off a bad injury, his second injury.
He's won a Super Bowl.
He has won.
Had the Falcons run the football.
I was going to say, you can't really take that away from Matt Ryan. To me, he's got an asterisk Super Bowl win.
I am going to take it away from him. Here's my problem Aaron Rodgers can make a lot of money, okay? Go to SpotTrack.com to read this. Listen, I have this problem. Matt Ryan's a smart guy, right? Few quarterbacks are dumb in the National Football League. And with all the games that he's played, with that great offense, they've got a lead, and they're throwing the football when all they do is run, and kick a field goal, and they're throwing the football. When is a quarterback ever going to call off his coach and audible to a running play because they need to work some clock?
It's not. They're not. That's not how the league is built these days anymore.
It is not.
And combine that with the fact that really what the Falcons did in that situation was we're going to ride the horse that got us here, and that horse is now a $100 million horse.
No.
So who's gonna say that we can't have Matt Ryan take us to where we need to go?
You know something?
It was a long time ago, Kevin.
I know it was a long time ago, and I'm not letting it go because of a square number that somebody had.
Oh, jeez.
All right?
It's either beer or money, one of the two.
Pretty much. And if I had more money, I could buy more beer. No, I'm not going to give this up. When their that last offensive possession before the Patriots went on the run, they could have iced it with the field goal, right? But they just kicked too quickly, left too much time on the clock. They threw the football, and they threw themselves. They took a sack, too. Right? Yes.
That was the sack was the big
right.
play.
Well, why the hell are you calling a passing play? Run the football. You were in when Julio Jones made an incredible catch that we could probably question now going back to every millisecond, but he made an incredible catch to put them in field goal territory. That called for a run.
Because football
kick.
coaches generally outthink themselves.
That's right.
Well, you know what? That's where the quarterback's got to say, well, you look at the time. That's Tom Brady over there. We just need to run. We need to run and kick and put this game on ice. But no, they got greedy and stupid, and they lost the Super Bowl in one of the biggest choke jobs in the history of the Super Bowl. It's not on. So to me, Matt Ryan's partially at fault for that, for not saying, you know what makes sense here? Running the football. What would Tom Brady do? What would Tom Brady do? He would have ran the football in that situation to take time off the clock.
Dock him
1%
of his new contract,
Well,
so $1 million, right?
He did help Malcolm Butler get $30 million guaranteed, if that makes you feel any better.
No kidding.
I have nothing more to say.
The Patriots didn't help him last year, that's for sure.
I thought I made a pretty good case there.
You did.
I'm really upset that you got no love for the Bobby Grich reference.
Let me give a quick parting shot here because I have a gripe of my own, and it's actually contract related. What are the New Orleans Saints doing? Does anybody know this answer? Because I thought
when they gave up a first-round pick to move up for a guy.
So that's
that
part
was
one of this conversation. I don't understand that they gave up a first and other picks.
Yes.
For a defensive end. Fine.
Pass rush.
It's fine.
Pass rush. You got to win with pass rush.
Fine. And now they've released Coby Fleener.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that too.
And this is a move that they
Although
needed.
he's never been the player that people thought he was going to be when he came out of Stanford as Andrew Luck's number one guy.
Coby Fleener was maybe the third guy added to my cap casualty list last November. I mean, this was coming. This should have come, but this should have come in February. All right? I mean, he has guaranteed salary. He has $3.4 million of guaranteed salary that kicked in March, which means that they're taking on $8.2 million in dead cap by doing this.
So they'd done it in February. They'd be taking on $3 million.
Yes,
$3.5 million instead of $8 million.
So yeah, about $5 million actually. But it makes no sense right now unless they thought they were going to address this better in the draft, and they needed to wait and see that, but they didn't. They brought in Ben Watson, who's 35 years old, and he's making his second trip to New Orleans. So I don't have an answer for what the Saints are doing, and they've been head scratchers for me since 2011, since this salary cap came back into form. And I've had gripes and gripes. They live on the edge. Yes. They don't have. It seems like they're not planning. They're not short-term, long-term planning.
I think that's Breeze getting as much in as you
Is
can
he in the way?
Before he. Well,
is Breeze in the way?
Well,
to me, that's the point to make.
Any
here.
great quarterback who makes that kind of money is always, to some degree, in the way. But I think it's like we better do this now before Drew walks away because he's getting to that point.
I don't get it. I'm looking at the business side of it, and I've got a ton of gripe with what the Saints have done over the years, and this is just two more examples of them, to me, torpedoing their cap. They're torpedoing their cap for the next year and a half.
Well, let's hope Sean Payton doesn't have a dog that'll tweet at you. Okay, we are we're out of time. We have more time, but we figured you've had enough, the listener here at SpotTrack.com. So for the founder of SpotTrack.com, Mike Giannetti and Paul Peck, I'm Kevin Sylvester. Thanks for listening to the SpotTrack.com podcast.